What's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist and today doing a Dark World deck profile. So I'm really excited to do this for you guys because this deck is an extremely powerful deck that's super fun to play, especially now that we have Dark Corridor in the TCG. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon in the description below for all those awesome rewards, like getting your name description in a single video, getting a signed cards in the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month to your Patreon. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're playing 3 copies of Rainbow over King of Dark World. This card is a definite 3-of in the deck that has a crazy powerful ability that you can special summon this card from your graveyard by returning a level 7 or lower Dark World monster you control back to your hand, which is a great ability to get you a boss monster on the field while also bouncing Dark World monsters back to your hand so you can discard them for their effects. But this card also has a great ability. If this card is discarded to the graveyard by a card effect, you can add a level 5 or higher Dark World monster from your deck to your hand, except another copy of this card, which is a really cool ability for this card to have. We then play 2 copies of Grapha, Dragon Lord of Dark World. I feel like 2 is totally fine in this deck because this card is really good as a 2-of, especially now that we have Dark Corridor to be able to search this card, but it has a great ability similar to your copy of your Rainbow, as you can special summon this card from your graveyard by returning a face-up Dark World monster you control back to your hand, except another copy of this card, and if this card is discarded, you can actually target a card your opponent controls and destroy it, which is a really awesome effect for this card to have. We then play 2 copies of Silva, Warlord of Dark World. This card is a definite 2 in the deck. You can actually hand loop your opponent with this card, with this build, which is just absolutely amazing. Because if this card is discarded to the graveyard by a card effect, you can special summon this card from the graveyard, which is a great ability, but if this card is discarded to the graveyard by an opponent's card effect, your opponent returns exactly 2 cards from their hand to the bottom of their deck in any order, which is very easy to do because you have your copy of your Grapha, Dragon Overlord of Dark World, and you have your copy of Cerule to be able to make your opponent discard this card, which is really good to be able to do because you can easily hand loop your opponent for their entire hand with this build. We then play 3 copies of Snow. Snow is a definite 3 on the build because if this card is discarded, you can add a Dark World card from your deck to your hand, which is a really cool effect about this card. We then play 3 copies of Genta, Gateman of Dark World. This card is also a definite 3-of in the build because this card has a great ability that you can only special summon this card once per turn, but you can discard this card to add the Gates of the Dark World from your deck to your hand, and if this card is banished, you can actually special summon this card, which is a really awesome effect for this card to have to instantly put this card onto your side of the field. And I love this effect about this card, that it just instantly gets it on your side of the field, especially with your copy of the Gates of the Dark World being able to banish it from the graveyard so you can draw cards. We then play 3 copies of Brow. Brow is really good as a 3-of in the deck as well, because if this card is discarded, you actually get to draw a card. We then play a single copy of Cerule. You only really need a single copy of Cerule, but this card is really good in this deck to be able to work with your copy of Silva, because it has a great ability. If this card is discarded to the graveyard by a card effect, you special summon this card from your graveyard to your opponent's side of the field in face-up defense position. And when this card is special summoned with the effect of a Dark World card, which it will be by its own effect, your opponent must discard a card, and since your opponent controls a card, then it'll actually go off to make you discard a card so you can discard your copy of Silva and hand rip them for 2, and you can do that multiple times a turn because we have ways to bounce this card back to hand and bounce your copy of Silva back to hand so you can do it again, which is really fun about this deck. We then play for the Danger Monsters. We're going to be playing 3 copies of Danger Bigfoot. Danger Bigfoot is a definite 3 on the build because this card is a level 8 monster that's super easy to put on your side of the field. And all of your Danger Monsters share a common ability to reveal this card in your hand, and your opponent randomly chooses 1 card from your entire hand and discards it to the graveyard. Then if the discarded card was not the danger that you revealed, you special summon that danger to your side of the field and then draw a card. But if you discard that Danger Monster when you reveal it, or if the danger is discarded to the graveyard, they actually get some really cool effects. Your copy of Danger Bigfoot has a unique ability that if this card is discarded, you actually get to target a face-up card your opponent controls and destroy it, which is a really cool ability. We then play a single copy of Danger Thunderbird. Danger Thunderbird is really good as a 1-of in the deck because if this card is discarded, you get to target a set card your opponent controls and destroy it. We then play just 2 copies of Danger Nessie. Danger Nessie is really good because if this card is discarded, you get to add a danger card from your deck to your hand. We then play 2 copies of Danger Mothman. Danger Mothman is really good in this deck as well because if this card is discarded, both players draw a card and then both players discard a card, which is amazing in Dark World because it lets your Dark World monsters effects go off. We then play just a single copy of Chupacabra. I have considered bumping Chupacabra back up to 2 in this build, but this card is really good because if it's discarded to the graveyard, you actually get to bring back a danger monster from your graveyard and just special summon it to your side of the field, which is a really cool effect. We then play a single copy of the Danger Noodle, aka Tsuchinoko. If this card is discarded, you just special summon it to your side of the field. We then play a single copy of Jackalope. Jackalope is really good in this deck as a 1-up, because if this card is discarded, you actually get to special summon a danger monster from your deck, which is a great effect for this card to have. We then play a single copy of Blackwing Zaphros the Elite. Zaphros the Elite is really good because if this card's in the graveyard, you can bounce a card from your side of the field back to the hand, take 400 points of damage, and then special summon this card to your side of the field. But it's a once per duel effect, but it's a great ability because your copies of your danger monsters and your Dark World cards are going to be discarding to the graveyard constantly. So this card is really good at just basically putting it in the graveyard and then bouncing a card back to your hand so you can use it later. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to start out with a really powerful spell card, and that's going to be a single copy of Card Destruction. Card Destruction is crazy powerful in the deck because it makes both players discard their entire hand, which will make all of your cards go off with their effects, which is crazy, while also refilling your hand. This card is one of the most powerful cards in the deck, and usually if you see this card, you win. We then play a single copy of Dark World Archives. This card is really good as a 1-up in the deck because it has a really cool ability that during your main phase, you can discard a Dark World monster, and if you do, Dark World monsters that you currently control gain attack equal to the level of the discarded monster had in your hand times 100 until the end of the turn. But you have to control a Dark World monster in order to activate that effect. It also has the ability if a monster whose original type is Fiend is discarded from your hand by the effect of a Dark World card or an opponent's card effect, even during the damage step, you can discard a card and then draw 2 cards, which is a really cool ability for this card to have. We then play just 2 copies of Dark Corridor. I feel like this card is just a 2-of in this build. You don't need 3 because it is a once per turn, and you can draw this card out super easy in the build. You only need 2 copies of this card. I almost played just a single copy of it, but I didn't see it enough when I played it at just 1 in playtesting, so I feel like 2 is the perfect number. It lets you add any Dark World monster from your deck to your hand, and then you discard a card, so basically it says get a free Dark World effect to go off, which is really amazing, especially with cards like Snow, to be able to search out any other Dark World card you want to deck them. And this card is just amazing in the deck as a 2-of in the build. I absolutely love this card, and it's amazing that this deck finally has a Rhoda. We then play 2 copies of Dark World Accession. This card is really good because this card is a fusion spell, so we can go in for our Grapha Fusion monster, and it's really easy to get back out of your graveyard as well because it has a great ability that during the main phase, you can fusion summon a Fiend Fusion monster from your X-Shake by banishing fusion materials mentioned on it from your field or grave. And if you fusion summon a Dark World monster, this way you can also discard monsters as well as material, which is a great ability to make your Dark World monsters effects go off. And during your main phase, if this card's in the graveyard, you can add this card to your hand and then discard a Dark World monster, which is a great effect for this card to have because it helps you get this card back out of the graveyard so you can go for your copy of your Grapha Dragon Overlord of Dark World. We then play 3 copies of Allure of Darkness. This card just helps you dig into the deck, especially since we play so many darks in the deck. Being able to draw 2 cards and then banish a dark monster from the hand is just really good, so this card is a really good 3-of in this build. We then play 3 copies of the Gates of the Dark World. This card is really powerful as a 3-of because all Fiend-type monsters gain 300 attack and defense, and once per turn you can banish a Fiend-type monster from your graveyard, discard a Fiend monster from your hand, and then draw a card. And it is a soft once per turn, so you can activate it for every single copy, which is amazing because it's very easy to loop through 3 copies of this card per turn. And also it makes your copy of Genta go off when you discard a card from your hand and then banish Genta from the graveyard. Genta will actually come back to the field once per turn, which is amazing because Genta searches this card. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're going to start off with 2 copies of Grapha Dragon Overlord of Dark World. This card is an amazing boss monster for the deck, and it's actually super easy to summon in this build. It takes a copy of Grapha plus any dark monster to make this card, and when your opponent activates a monster effect or a normal spell or trap while you have a card in your hand, quick effect, you can activate this effect that the activated effect becomes your opponent discards a card, meaning we discard a card so that our cards go off, which is really cool about this card, and I absolutely love it. And if this card does leave the field because of an opponent's card, you get to special summon a copy of the original Grapha to your side of the field, which is a great ability to just instantly get Grapha to your side of the field, and it's awesome that this card replaces itself. We then play a single copy of number 60. Number 60 is really good because it lets us draw 2 and discard a card, which is super helpful about this card. I love this card in the deck, and it's super easy to make in this build. We then play a single copy of number 38. We do put level 8s on the field extremely easily, so this card is really good at putting itself on your side of the field so you can negate spell effects. We then play a single copy of Coach King. Coach King is really good because you can draw 3 cards per turn off this effect, which is just amazing because you can detach material from this card and then draw a card and reveal it, and if it's a monster card, it inflicts 800 points of damage to your opponent. But you cannot conduct your battle phase the turn you activate this effect, and you can use this effect up to thrice per turn, and it takes 3 level 8s to make this card, but that's super easy to do in the deck to help you draw 3 cards out of the deck. This card is definitely a one-of in the deck, and pretty much should be a Dark World card because this card is just absolutely amazing in the deck. We then play a single copy of Double A Zeus because it's easy to make Zeus in the deck to be able to board wipe the field. Play a single copy of Underworld Goddess. Underworld Goddess is very easy to make just to deal with your opponent's cards that they might have on their field because you can use one of their monsters as link material to be able to make this card. Play a single copy of Yugioh because being able to dig into the deck is extremely important in this deck, and you're always going to make this card. This card is extremely important as a one-of in the deck, just to help you dig in the deck and also special summon a monster from your hand to your side of the field. Play a single copy of Appaloosa. Appaloosa is amazing in this build because this card just gives you monster negates, and this deck just puts monsters on the field like crazy, so it's very easy to step into a copy of Appaloosa during the end of your turn. After you loop your opponent's hand with Silva, they're usually only going to have like no cards in their hand or like 1 card in their hand with Silva, and this card is just really good in the deck to be able to negate the last card that they have after you activate Silva like twice in a turn, and it's just really good. We then play a single copy of Unicorn. Unicorn's really good because it spins cards off the field. So this card is really good as a one-of. 1 copy of Nightmare Phoenix. Nightmare Phoenix is really good as a one-of as well to pop spells and traps. We then play a single copy of Akashic Magician and a single copy of Security Dragon. These cards basically do the exact same thing, which is when we play these cards in the deck, that once while they're on the field, if they are co-linked, you can actually target a card that this card points to and bounce it back to the hand. In the case of Security Dragon, it targets a monster that your opponent controls and returns it back to the hand. But the only reason we're playing these cards in the deck is because we're trying to balance the copy of Cerule that our opponent has on their side of the field back to our hand so we can discard it again, give it back to the opponent, and discard another copy of Silva to rip another 2 cards out of our opponent's hand, which is just extremely important about these 2 cards, being able to balance your copy of Cerule. So always put your copy of Cerule in column 2 or column 4 when you give it to your opponent, because you get to pick where you put it. So put it in column 2 or column 4 so you can make sure you can balance it with either a Akashic Magician or your copy of Security Dragon. But the really cool thing about Akashic Magician is actually it has the ability that you can only link summon this card once per turn, and if this card is link summoned, you can actually return all monsters card points to back to the hand, which is a great ability to use with this card to instantly bounce a card when you summon Akashic Magician, where your copy of Security Dragon has to be co-linked. We then play a single copy of Mudracker. Mudracker is really good because it brings back a Fiend to your side of the field, which is just really good. And then we play a single copy of IP. IP is really good so you can make your copy of Nightmare Unicorn during the opponent's turn, or your copy of Underworld Goddess, because it's very easy to make Underworld Goddess in this deck, especially being able to use IP to be able to use your Underworld Goddess almost like a kaiju to deal with your opponent's cards. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you enjoyed. This deck is super fun to be able to play. If you guys have never played Dark World before, you should definitely give this deck a try. It's super fun to be able to play. There's all sorts of spicy tech cards in this build that you guys should try out, and it's just an amazing deck, especially now that we have Dark Corridor, because Dark Corridor is just so powerful in this deck. So that's going to do it for this one, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can become part of the notification squad, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.